welcome to this very first dialogue of the GEO Working Group's GEO Data Sharing and Data Management Principles dialogue series. We are going to talk about data sharing and data management principles for 8 weeks on the row now, every Monday from 4 to 5:30 Central European Time. The last one will be on the 24th of October, so the fall is all set. My name is Bente Liljaby. I'm going to be your host or the moderator for this particular dialogue series, but we will exchange the moderator and of course the other persons. We will introduce both the people behind this and also the speakers and also you in the audience eventually when we get to it. So I have a few slides as we are warming up that I will show you before we start fully. So let me share my screen again. So this is the very first one. We are going to talk about data life cycles today. But first, while we are waiting to get started, we have some house rules or housekeeping. When you are not speaking, please remember to mute your microphone. And when you want to say something or ask questions or comment, which we really want you to do, then you raise your hand and we will give you the floor and the screen to express what you have in mind. Other than that, we just want you to sit back and enjoy this GEO dialogue series, the first one. Okay, I think we are ready to get a little bit a story behind why we are organizing this dialogue series. We want to be advocating the data sharing and data management principles. Many of you have heard about it. You have even implemented it. Some have some knowledge, but not know really exactly what it is. So we have all shades of knowledge about the data sharing and data management principles, one of the key results from GEO. So that's one of the reasons we want to advocate what we have. We also want to, in the data working group, we also decided that we wanted to create some more awareness of their principles and specifically the benefits that you can have from implementing them by talking about the theory behind it, the ideas behind it, and also particularly important is to showcase implementation so you can get inspired. Also, we want to make these trainings or information sustainable. So we want to make recordings. So all of these dialogue series are being recorded and you will be getting access to the presentations and all the material will be made available on the Knowledge Hub and on other places. So the GEO Knowledge Hub is a place where GEO is collecting as a tool for sharing not only data that we have been talking about for a long time, but also other resources and knowledge. So you will get links to the GEO Knowledge Hub during this dialogue series. So don't panic. We also want to share it via the network at large, and you are encouraged to share with your colleagues and in your networks this resource that we are creating jointly now. And we also want to mention specifically another motivation for engaging right now, and that is that we are focusing on revitalizing our focus on in situ data, and also another aspect that is necessary to solve if you want to make data and knowledge interoperable, namely law and policies. So we want to streamline all of that, and that's why we also wanted to engage with you. So this is a little bit about the story behind the dialogue series. We have in the GEO Data Working Group, we have subgroups and that are focusing, as you see here, on in situ, law and policy, licenses and others, and of course, we have the implementation of all this in the GEO work program. So each of the dialogues thus have that perspective, or the joint dialogue series have those perspectives. And each of the dialogues, we aim to have a theoretical presentation so that you know a little bit about the principles behind it, the theory, the science behind these data sharing and data management principles, but also examples. As I said, we want to showcase implementations. And then, of course, you have more principles that are complementing and enforcing the data sharing, the GEO data sharing and data management principles, such as the fair, care, and trust. So we want to show and discuss the complementarity of these other principles. So that's a little bit behind, more behind what the dialogue series is about. And then a quick recap on what the GEO data sharing principles are. It was one of the things that were very important already from the start, the ad hoc GEO, and what you see here, and you will get this as flyers during this dialogue as well. The GEO data sharing principles had a slight update actually in the second 10-year period that started from the Mexico City ministerial meeting. We want to share data, and data metadata products will be shared openly by default, and we want to make them available as part of the GEO's data collection and open resources for everyone, the data core, without charge or restrictions on reuse, subject to conditions of registration and attributions when the data are reused. So that's number one. The second is, where international instruments, national policies, or legislations preclude the sharing of data as open data, data should be made available with minimal restrictions on the use and no more than the cost of reproduction and distribution. And thirdly, all shared data, products, and metadata will be made available with minimum time delay. So this is just a recap of the data sharing principles. And I will not go through all details of the data management principles, but just remember that we have 10 of them organized in discovery, access, encoding, documentation, provenance, quality control, preservation, verification, review and processing, and identifiers. And you see there are some codes here for each of these. And that is one of the reasons I mentioned this here is that we address all of them in this the dialogue series. And we start with the beginning. Today is the start with the data lifecycle. And then we go through the data sharing principles next Monday. And then from there on, we will cover discoverability, accessibility, usability, preservation, curation. And finally, we are also presenting a data management self-assessment tool. So you see, it's each Monday throughout this fall until the 24th of October. Marie-Françoise Wadreau and I, Bente Liljaby, we have been working and we will continue to work with you to make this dialogue series as useful as possible. And now I want to give the floor to you, Marie-Françoise, so that you can introduce yourself so that people get to know you.
Yes, good morning, everyone, and thank you to be here. I will support Bente during the implementation of these dialogues. Sometimes I will be moderating or introducing, we will share. And today I will support her by summarizing the main ideas that will be presented by the speakers into the chat, so you can catch up in case we go too quick or you are distracted because you think about your own ideas. This happens to all of us, and it will support that. So I am publishing here the resources and the summary of the dialogues. And again, thank you to be here. We really hope these dialogues to be a unique opportunity to exchange and build knowledge together.
And Marie-Françoise, did you say where you work?
Apologies, yes. I work with the Open Geospatial Consortium, which is known to be a standard organization. In fact, we try to build solutions to support the community, to build solutions, and standards are a mean to build reusable solutions and modular architectures. Here we are standardizing the knowledge and the understanding for the implementation and the management of the data. And so this is very important. I participate in several major European initiatives such as eShape that will be mentioned, I think, in several dialogues, InCase supported by EEA. And so this is why this activity is very important for us. It merges a lot of efforts.
Thank you, Marie-Françoise. You will for sure get to know more about Marie-Françoise and me during this fall. My background is, well, actually, and I'm an astrophysicist, and that was actually led me to Earth observations through Geodesy. And as a research director at the Mapping Authority, that's how I came very early into the GEO family, as we call it, in 2004. And I have been involved in many different roles in GEO, and particularly interested in data sharing and making data interoperable for applications, both in science and in operational services. I run a small research and consultancy company here in Norway. I'm a member of the data management, the data working group now. I am also involved in making a digital twin of the ocean. And so for a particular interest in making now data interoperable on a very near real time sharing basis, which is very demanding. Just a little bit about my background as well. Now I will, before we really get to today's program, which is the data lifecycle, we want to introduce you to the basis, and we start there with data lifecycles, and you will be encouraged to participate in the dialogue. So it's not going to be just the presentations. The presentations will be on for 5 to 7 minutes. They will be rather short, and that is done deliberately so that you can ask and also share your knowledge during the event here. And I will share again my screen. You will see here we have the Zoom chat. So what you do, you can write your comments, ideas in the chat, and you can raise your hand. As I said, you will be given the floor. We encourage you to take the floor, ask for the floor and take the floor. And we also will be running some polls, some very short polls during very now in the beginning. And then also at the end, we will ask you to fill in some small questions, but that actually can require you to do that even after we ended the dialogue. So the data life cycles. There are many ways of doing that. And to introduce us to the topic, we have the first speaker, Marie-Christine. And we have the second one is going to talk more about different life cycles. And thirdly, from Miguel, we will get some examples from the biodiversity community. So I think, Marie-Christine, I will ask you to, so each of the introductions will be given. We will first have an introduction of the speakers. Marie-Christine will introduce herself, just like Marie-Françoise and I did. And then she will take us through her introduction to the life cycles. And then we will have a dialogue. We will open the floor and we will encourage you to engage before Carl will go on and compare different ideas about what the life cycle is. And then we will have a dialogue based on his introduction. And then finally, but not least, we will look at some examples, and maybe there it will be you will be inspired to share your examples as well when you see what Miguel is sharing with us. Okay, Marie-Christine, I will give the floor to you. I will stop sharing. You will get this slide if you really want to study what Marie-Christine has been doing or does. But Marie-Christine, we want to see you and hear who you are, and you can get to start to introduce us to Lifecycle. Floor is yours, Marie-Christine.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for inviting me to join your discussion. So my name is Marie-Christine Jacquemot, and I work at the Institute for Scientific Information in Nancy, in France. It's a research support unit of the French National Center for Scientific Research. Before joining this institute, I have several experience in research in the molecular biology domain. But since 2012, I really got engaged in research data management activities. And since then, my main goals have been always to facilitate data management for researchers, try to alleviate what they consider as a burden, and to integrate the different services that can help them to achieve this data management task. So my current activities, I work as a project manager. I really focus currently on DMP OPIDOR development. DMP OPIDOR is a tool for DMP. I will talk a little bit about it later. And the idea is really to integrate it into the research workflow and to facilitate the implementation of the FAIR principle. But also now we tend to integrate also disciplinary community best practices. And also in parallel, since 1 year now, I've been involved at another stage of the data life cycle, which is sharing, as I'm part of the operating and support team of the National Repository Recherche DataGouv. And in addition, I also follow all the Research Data Alliance DMP groups. So data life cycle, it's a model or representation of the various stages during which people interact with data, and at which task has to be performed to manage and ensure data quality. So what is data management? What is it for? I chose a definition in research data management, which is more my field, but it's caring for, so really to take care of the data, facilitating the access to the data, preserving in the long term as well, and adding value to research data throughout its life cycles. You will see it later, but you already heard about it. There is not a single or just one data life cycles model, but it can vary based on the research or operational data workflows. So data management plan are really often and too often considered just administrative formula, but first and foremost, they should really be considered as tool to anticipate and implement data management, as they can help to think and make decisions before and during the project activity. They help to find appropriate tools, services, standards to store, organize, structure, and document the data. And also they help through a recommendation, but also through tools to interact with all the institutional community or data-related services that are being built, organized to help you manage your data. And so that through this interaction, you can then obtain all the resources you need, the expertise, and through that flow, then you can also acquire all new skills to better manage your data. So DMP OPIDOR, DMP OPIDOR is based initially on another tool that you may know, which is DMP Online, or DMP roadmap exactly. But we in France we adopted this code source, but made a lot of evolution to really meet the needs of our French scientific communities, and also to adopt the RDA machine actionable DMP principles. As I said, DMP should be really a tool to implement data management principle and to help researchers. And so the idea is to really integrate within DMP all the services that are available to researchers. So in this tool, what we propose is a new structured data model template that represents actually a common data life cycles, but it is extensible and it can be adapted to take into account various kinds of data and life cycles. And this model is compliant with Science Europe core requirement for data management plans and with the RDA DMP common standards also. And its my aim will be to encourage and really facilitate prayer principle implementation, but also other principles and application of funder and institutional policies. And finally, we really aim to integrate when possible and when helpful all the data related services registry, so that the researcher or the data producer, once he has to do this data management plans, has all the information he needs about the services and tools available in his environment. So just brief overview on our model. Just you can see in the green boxes, you can see different stages of data life cycles that you will see then in the next presentation as well. And so by implementing the data life cycle in this model, it really helps really putting into practice all the data management tasks that would be identified when you establish data research life. The data life cycles model. I'm not going to talk more about DMP OPDR today because it should be discussed a bit more on the 21st. Thank you. So if you have any question, please do ask.
Yes, thank you very much, Marie-Christine. This was the first introduction, and I just wanted to remind you of, we are using acronyms all the time, and the DMPs is data management principles, but also data management plans, which was your initial starting point, Marie-Christine, right?
Yes.
And you will see here in the poll that I published now while you were speaking, just before you started your presentation, that we are asking if people have been involved in data management plans. And we see that there are many that have partially or directly, and some haven't. But that's one of the motivations for defining a data life cycle, is that many of us have to prepare a data management plan. So that's a good starting point and a good motivation for us to get involved in this. You said at the end of your presentation that we will talk more about the OPDR tool, which is a data management assessment tool that I mentioned initially, and that will be presented in more detail for you at the end. The last dialogue series on the 24th of October. But now, folks, any comments, any questions that you have to Marie-Christine? This is the time. We really want that. So, yes, I see Orestes. Do you want to take the floor, Orestes?
Yes, I'm here. Hello, hi everyone, and thank you for the nice presentation. I've been hearing the phrase machine actionable DMPs also in Horizon Europe presentations, and could you, I'm just asking if you could elaborate a bit more, what exactly does this mean? And if 1,000 projects in 2 years from now have machine actionable DMPs, what opportunities do we have from having such a DMP? Thank you.
Okay. So machine actionable DMP means quite a few things actually. So through the RDA group, there was an exchange format was built, well, data model, sorry, and then an exchange format was created. So it means for us when you use DMP Opidor, for example, but other tools also provide that, you can then extract your DMP in such a RDA DMP common standard format. So it facilitates the exchanges. So in 1 year time or more, then when a lot of people have actually exported or deposit somewhere all this DMP in the same format, it means that then you can make some queries and to get some information about data management practices, about data sets or other products that have been produced through a project or other data activities. In this, in DMP Opidor, also to really go towards this DMP machine actionable. So it means also that we have a structure that we try to use standard vocabularies to encourage the use of persistent identifiers. Also to try to integrate registries when, as I said, when it is possible and when it is helpful, because we don't want to add an extra difficulty or obstacle to researchers. And so we don't want, for example, to link to a big registry and then the researcher would get a long list of results and wouldn't be able to choose between different ones, for example, for a repository. So this, for us, this is the work of communities like GEOS to really work with us or with other tools and really prepare these standards and, for example, repositories, so that when the researcher comes to build and draft his data management plan, then he has already a selections of the repository that would be recommended for his community, for his discipline. And in machine actionable, what we mean is that we can reuse information, for example, from projects that have been funded. Then we can collect and get from other information system, we can get the information about the project, about the funding, about the partners, for example. We also can ask resources from data center, for example. So through the model we built, we can specify it, and so that in a disciplinary way, with different, for example, like I said, repositories or metadata standards. But also we can have also specified for a particular institutional environment, so that the researchers can have all the information he needs about his institutional environment, but also about the discipline about his discipline. Sorry, is that clear? Please ask more questions if you need.
No, thank you. I think I have a better picture now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I see Carl raised his hand. Please go ahead.
Certainly, yes. And I work at a U.S. university, and one of the other areas that we've been looking at in our collaboration with our vice presidents for research office is looking at data management plans as a way to better align institutional support resources like storage and computation and preservation systems to the needs of our researchers, as the research development activities are largely distributed across the institution. And while sponsored research that requires submission of proposals goes through our Office of the Vice President for Research, there are a lot of other research activities that that don't. And being able to effectively extract the required infrastructure to support research in an ongoing fashion is another significant institutional benefit that we've been looking at for being able to work with data management plans. And machine actionable data management plans would make that much more straightforward in terms of extracting that information.
Yes, thank you, Carl. And I see now Marie-Françoise.
Yes, I just want to clarify, because we have mentioned the word research several times. So there is the research about the topic of the data lifecycle itself. There is a data lifecycle and data management plans applied to research projects, but the concept is applicable in the same way to operational systems and developments. So this is why Carl and Marie-Christine are more in the field of research on the data lifecycle, data management plan, and also applied to RDA to research projects. Miguel will present a more applied use of the data lifecycle.
Thank you for that, Marie-Françoise. Any other comments now to Marie-Christine? We will have time also afterwards. If you come with a question later, you are more than welcome to raise your hand and comment. I don't see any. Can you unshare your screen, Marie-Christine? Thank you very much. And now, Carl, let's see how different approaches can map onto each other, and you will take us through complexity or simplicity of data life cycles.
Perhaps complexity.
And introduce yourself first, of course, Carl.
Certainly. Yes, as I mentioned a moment ago, I work at the University of New Mexico in Albuquerque, New Mexico in the US, where I direct our research data services and IT programs in our university library. And this is something that I've done for the last 8 years, following on 15 years at an applied research center, the Earth Data Analysis Center, and having a number of leadership roles in the Earth Science Information Partners, for which I serve as an alternate program board representative for GEO. And before all of that, I started life as an archaeologist, as a field archaeologist, and then as a data manager and data analyst, in which I started very early developing databases and managing and analyzing geospatial data. And it was through that archaeological work that I came into working with Earth observation data, as I was in my research and actually applied research as a professional archaeologist, synthesizing a combination of cultural heritage and Earth observation data in a wide variety of projects. So I come at this topic of research and applications life cycles from the perspective of having participated pretty much in all the phases of a data life cycle in terms of initial capture and documentation, analysis and management, visualization, collaboration and sharing, and ultimately preservation and documentation of data for long-term discovery, access, and reuse through these various roles that I've played over the years. And what I'm going to talk about today, and I'll paste into the chat, this is the link to the presentation if you wanted to follow along or click on any of the links that are embedded in the presentation. I'm going to talk today about an activity that's been ongoing in our data working group, looking at the intersection or the connections between the GEO data sharing and data management principles and other life cycles and principles that exist out there in an effort to identify synergies, overlap, gaps that we might have, and also be able to more effectively communicate the GEO principles in reference to other principles and life cycles. So this slide highlights that this is specifically coming out of the Data Sharing and Data Management Principles Working Group as a subgroup of the Data Working Group, and providing credit for all of the many contributors from the working group that have participated in this development of this so far, which is still very much a work in progress. So, as I said, what we are really looking at is looking at the context of the data sharing and data management principles from GEO, and looking at how they might interact or overlap or connect with other principles that some broader members of the community may be more familiar with. And this has then been integrated into the revised GEO data sharing and management principles that has been submitted by the GEO Secretariat for the program board, for a program board decision. That was just earlier this summer. So we've already heard some about life cycles and principles, so I won't belabor the details here, but because I want to go to what the preliminary results we have are. So here is a reiteration of the data sharing principles, here with a little bit more detail in terms of breaking down some of the, in this case, the data sharing principles into some subcomponents that are a little bit more amenable to connectivity with other life cycle or principle elements. But these are essentially the data sharing principles that we also already heard about. The data management principles, the same approach as we basically have a label for each one and then the short description that have been then used in the summary analysis results that I'll be presenting in just a moment. So thus far, we've identified a short list of life cycle frameworks and principles that we are working against. And these are just some illustrations of the various, in this case, life cycles that we are looking at so far, keeping in mind that each one of these is structured a little differently and oriented towards a different community and practitioner needs. And as a result, we're working here with a diversity of life cycle concepts that each are optimized for their own purposes. Likewise, when we're talking about particular principles, we're talking about principles that also are aligned with particular community needs, whether in the FAIR principles, it is the focus on discoverability, accessibility, and interoperability and reusability. Talking about the CARE principles, a different orientation in terms of ensuring that there is a collective benefit that is a part of the consideration of discoverability and access and use of data. Who has the authority and responsibility and ethical use of data? And then as we're talking about the trust principles, a set of principles more specifically related to repositories and how they operate in a sustainable and community engaged fashion. So this is an illustration of the life cycles and principles that we've been working with so far. And this is just a quick illustration of some preliminary results that we've obtained so far in terms of first, and this is all summarized in a collection of documents in the RStudio cloud link that I have later in the presentation. It's also in a shared GitHub repository, and it is fed into the revised GEO data management principles document that is available through the Knowledge Hub as well. So this is just a summary of the different connections of the principles and life cycles with the different data management and data sharing principles. So that's one way of presenting this. Another approach has been to actually try to visualize the linkages between the data management or data sharing principles and other life cycles in an effort to get a more qualitative understanding, though we can potentially do so in a quantitative way as well, where in this case, this is a sample that illustrates a fairly high degree of connectivity between, in this case, the geodata management principles and the data one lifecycle elements, where essentially all of the elements are connected in one way or another, providing a strong degree of overlap and connectivity. That's in contrast to this visualization in which the NSTC lifecycle elements are all covered by a subset of the geo data management principles. So this highlights areas in which we can help to understand what components in the geo principles most align with this organizational set of life cycle elements. Similarly, when we're talking about principles, this is the geodata management principles mapped to the FAIR principles. And we can see here that there are just a few gaps in both in terms of elements in the geodata management principles or the FAIR principles that don't necessarily link at this point, potentially highlighting areas for updates or filling in some blanks. Similarly, an illustration of the connections to the trust principles. And then this is actually a combination of the geodata management principles and the FAIR and trust principles together. Again, looking at where combinations of principles may also contribute to a more comprehensive coverage for a combination of needs or requirements. So as we move on with this, we have a number of next steps in terms of being able to enable multiple contributions. The mappings that have been done thus far have largely been done by myself with input from our subgroup. But what we'd really like to do is to be able to systematically collect input from a larger group of experts. Being able to expand the current data model to represent the nature of the connections. What types of connections are they? Not just a generic, these relate to each other in some unspecified way. Developing an online dashboard that allows for ongoing interaction with the information and data being collected related to these connections. And then, of course, publishing these in one or more publication venues so that we can share more broadly the insights coming out of this work. And so these are a set of discussion questions that, that relate to what we might want to ask the group in terms of your input, and we can come back to these as we go into our discussion. But I also then wanted to highlight that this is all openly available. There's the Google spreadsheet where we are currently collecting and managing connection information. There's an RStudio cloud project that you can make a copy of and work with yourself that has the analytic code that's providing those visualizations and the tabular summary. There is a GitHub repository that contains all of the same information, and then of course the link to this presentation. So with that, I am done.
Thank you very much, Carl. Thank you very much. As you see, you just illustrated in my view what I said initially, that the data sharing and data management principles we have are actually complementing each other, and you fine-tune where there were more overlap and more gaps to be filled. Let me see now. Yeah, please, the floor is open. So please raise your hand, ask some questions or comment, share your perspective and views. You can write in the chat or raise your hand. Ideally, raise your hand because it's more lively for all of us when you are speaking. So anybody?
And this is one of those areas where these questions that I now have up on the screen are certainly some areas that we're looking for input from a broader community in terms of how we can continue to move this initiative forward. In terms of, we've identified a set of life cycles or principles, but if there are additional ones that you would like us to bring into our process, that would be greatly appreciated. Suggestions of other applications that we might use from these data that are helping to represent these connections. And then also, what different areas of expertise should we draw on for being able to identify what these connections are and what types of connections exist?
Yes, and if these questions are maybe a little bit heavy to answer on the fly, this is actually what we have captured in the poll that we will post. We will post these questions so you can answer them in peace and quiet after the end of the dialogue. So it will be part of the poll. So you don't have to stick to this now. You can have any other questions and comment related to what Carl said, or for what Marie-Christine said, for that matter. While you are thinking, Carl, we are talking about in Geo, of course, that we want data to be interoperable. That's one of the overall goals. Do you feel that this analysis are pointing to areas that we need to address specifically in order to succeed with interoperability? Have you made some reflections on that?
Not very deep yet, but going back and looking at, and this is where really starting to dive a little bit more deeply into the nature of the connections is I think a necessary next step to be able to go beyond just saying, these are conceptually similar to each other or have mutual support for each other, but being able to dive a little bit more deeply, because your question is exactly one where we could, for example, identify a degree of connectivity or support, and being able to do that in a systematic way.
Yes. Thank you, Carl. Marie-Françoise, is that a fresh or an old hand?
Oh, it's a fresh hand.
Yes, the floor is yours.
Just to add to your question, because interoperability is the third FAIR principle. The I is for interoperability, and you have shown some graphics where you map the FAIR principles to the Geo principles, so we can see where the interoperability, what principles from the Geo principles map and contribute to the interoperability, from the encoding and all the standards which I used through all of that. So I think it's a first way to go into your question.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yes. So where is that it's to the bottom.
Right. So it would be,
yes.
It would be these FAIR I principles, right? These three right here.
Right, and you see that they are mapping to several of the Geo data management principles, right? Mm-hmm. It's a rich connectivity, and it looks to me that on, just on a visual, that Geo is very good at defining or supporting interoperability, right?
That I think that has been a historic emphasis in terms of adoption of standards when available, and conventions beyond standards when they also exist in the community, but haven't yet been formalized in standards.
Yes, so if you want to reach interoperability, of course, you have a simple way, which is to apply the same methods, the same sensors to measure everywhere. But this is never applicable because you have so many governances, and in history, different projects. We are working now on data management to be reused for climate studies. So we have to deal with past data that were measured in a different way that we could not control at this time. So we have to homogenize series and so on. So of course, having the same global network is the easy way. But then you can, even with different sensors, have the same measurement process. And if you have different things, you can encode in the same way. you have different approaches. But then having big principles is nice. What the geodata management principles do nicely is that they give some recommendation for the implementation. And this is more applied. And going towards more applied and even some best practices like maybe Miguel will present later for a specific field. Again, the more you go into the details, you clarify all the ambiguities and the choices people have to make when they implement, and the more you support the interoperability.
Yes. Carl, you had some codes there on different life cycles, data life cycles. Now, in Geo, we are talking about Earth observations, right? All sorts of Earth observations, ranging from in situ to space, and all types of Earth observations from different sensors and instruments, including, by the way, citizen science. But I will come back to that. But in order to actually make use of Earth observations, it's important to be able to make this data also interoperable with other types of data. I was just wondering, so economic data, statistics, different types of data. Are any of the data life cycles that you had looked into, are they a different type of data? So non-Earth observation type of data, or have you looked at that?
Yes, and in this context, if we go, for example, to our list of life cycles, for example, the data life cycle, while having a foundation, is more founded as a program that was originally funded by the U.S. National Science Foundations, by the U.S. National Science Foundation. It is more broadly focused in environmental data, and there are even some extension points into social science data as a part of the sort of data focus of the Data One program. I would also look at U.S. National Institute for Standards and Technology Research Data Framework. That's a high level, very, very general framework that certainly transcends Earth observation data. Some of our others are very much grounded in the Earth observation data, as we have, as you can see just from their names. So there's a mix, and the same thing could be said, and actually it's in the principles where we see the much more general approaches, where FAIR is absolutely not at all limited only to Earth observation data, but to the wide range of data types. CARE principles as well. While Earth observation data certainly have a strong reliance or could have a strong reflection in giving thought to and applying the CARE principles, those principles apply much more widely, as do the trust principles as well for repository sustainability.
Thank you. I don't see any more hands at this stage, do I? Let me see. No, I don't. So it's crystal clear. And but so then why don't we just go and see some examples? And by the way, you mentioned briefly that we have a new guidelines for implementation. We will share those guidelines with you also, so you can study that a little bit closer. But now we will see practical examples on implementations. I will, before I give the floor to you, Miguel, I will end the poll here. I will share the results of the first poll because I have a second one that is coming very quickly up here. And you see who we are in this group. We are data providers, 44%, data users, 41%, technology providers, 48%, decision makers, 11%, and other types of background is 22%. So a very good mix of backgrounds. So thank you for participating, y'all. And then the second question in this round was, have you ever written a data management plan? 30% have indeed, 41% have not, and 30% has partially, so they are being part of developing the data management plan. So thank you very much. I thought I would share this with you before we start then with you, Miguel. So thank you for your patience, and we are excited now to hear about some examples. So you can present yourself first as the others, and then we will learn about your experience. Miguel, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I just want to make sure that my presentation is in full screen mode, and maybe you can give me a hint there.
Yes, it is.
Okay, great. Anyway, thank you so much to you, Bente and Marie-Francois, for the invitation. I'm delighted to be here and talk you through this, my personal experience, my personal research experience with biodiversity information. And I really hope that this presentation can provide food for thought and also entice discussion in the audience. And maybe later we can go into a much more panel approach where we could talk about these issues and what are the things that I can learn from you, and what are the things that the audience can learn from all of the speakers and I. So as I said, my name is Miguel. I'm originally from South America, from Bolivia. I was born in La Paz. And I started my journey into the data world when I was working back in the old times. I was working in the California Academy of Sciences in San Francisco, and I was in charge of the data management, obviously. And at that time, remote sensing data was starting to be made available to the biodiversity community. And it was an interesting moment in time because there was this perceived fracture between the in situ and the remote sensing Earth observation communities. And I think biodiversity was something that could bring the glue to these two communities, because we were using both to try to understand change in patterns in biodiversity. I am now working at the German Center for Integrative Biodiversity Research, that is an organization based in Leipzig in Germany. And my job is to write data management plans, among other things. I'm a postdoctoral researcher here. This is my second postdoctoral work. I did my first postdoctoral research work here in the same lab with my current boss, Enrique Pereira, which is one of the lead authors of this concept of the essential biodiversity variables, which is an analog to the essential climate variables that is trying to bring a little bit of a framework to the biodiversity community. So anyway, this is my background, and I put these two figures while we were talking. And I thought that these were very interesting because on the left, you can see how the paradigm has shifted from the, maybe 10 years ago, when everybody was, so aggressively protecting their own data. We now live in a data where, in an era where data, in a time where data, you could get so much data. It's so easy to get data, but it's also very dangerous and complicated to deal with data if you don't have a plan. And the second part of this slide, at the bottom, right-hand side, you see this income emperor being carried. And I want to think that that's data scientist. That's the most important person in a project from my perspective, because this is the person who will help us understand how do we deal with the data? What are the protocols? What are the structures? What are the archives, what are the standards, metadata standards, terminology, all these things that we sometimes researchers don't like to think about. It's very important to bring these people in. So I wanted to bring these two things into the discussion. So a little bit of background, probably you're not familiar with this, but recently the Intergovernmental Panel on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, this is a UN effort, and the acronym is IPBES, put out a report that said basically that 1 million species are at risk of extinction if we don't do something. So this is a really important wake-up call and has been supported by articles and research that talks about specific dimensions of biodiversity and the problems that we are facing. I think climate change, it's a problem, but the biodiversity crisis, it's perhaps as important as the climate change crisis. And we perhaps have not been able to fully acknowledge this. The problem why I think that's the case is that biodiversity is a complex problem to tackle. This is one of the expeditions of the Khan Academy in the old times. This is Madagascar, and that Toyota is trying to cross one of the rivers, perhaps not the right place, but you have multiple problems there. And that's exactly the same with biodiversity. You have multiple dimensions of this problem. You have overexploitation, pollution, habitat change, invasive species, magnified all by climate change. And there is all these teleconnections, interacting factors, feedback loops, all these connections between these. It's really difficult to know what's really happening. But the other problem is that biodiversity, it can mean different things for different people. You know, you have different levels of aggregation. You have genes, we have species, groups of species make populations, populations make ecosystems, and so all these confounding factors make this problem very, very difficult to tackle. And there has been lately a series of discussions that I think will end up in a meeting which will be held in Canada that will be hosted by the Chinese government. And this is the biodiversity, the post-2020 global biodiversity framework. This is where we will define as a planet the goals for the next 10 years that now are 8 years, because it took us so long to get together because of the pandemic, that this is basically the plan we will set for ourselves to track change in terms of biodiversity. This is a really, really good opportunity because it will help us make the trajectory of many of us much more sustainable. And what are the tools we have to assess the progress towards these self-imposed global goals? This is a framework that I like to share with you. This has two extremes. On one extreme, on the left-hand side, you have the data generators, the people who produce the data that are diverse in the biodiversity community. Some of them could be, for instance, museums or research organizations, including universities. And these data generators produce, in a way, three types of data from my perspective. They could be more remote sensing, in situ, and this new kid on the block, which is called citizen science. And what we're trying to do here is try to provide a little bit of framework to these observations that come from these different sources. And this framework is called the essential biodiversity variables. This is, in a way, we're trying to provide a framework similar to the climate community that tell us what is the temperature and precipitation for biodiversity. But as I said, the problem is really complex because of all the dimensions of biodiversity. And that's why it's still in the process of being developed. But the idea is that we bring this together, this information together, and we provide actionable information that can inform policymakers, the civil society, intergovernmental organizations, plans for the future. You know, if you are a multilateral funding organization, you might be interested in where do I invest? My portfolio of investments, I want to make sure that it's green. Where do I put the money and make sure that this investment is as sustainable as possible? So this is kind of the framework we're using to understand this problem. But now I would like to take you to a little bit of a journey that explains where this information that is feeding that process comes from. And a lot of people tend to think that the information just is collected, right? But there is a driving force, and I would like to refer to that driving force, which is curiosity. We are all curious people, and that's why we're in this business of information. So we like to observe, and people that are curious about our natural environment like to observe these kind of things, right? These are examples of the complex world we live in terms of biodiversity. But we use tools to observe, right? And there is many ways to capture this information. I wish I could be one of those guys in the balloon collecting information about butterflies in the canopy of the forest in Brazil, or someone electrifying fish in the middle of a river, trying to understand what species they might find. So there is all these fancy tools that we use to capture information. And in the biodiversity world, as in many other data worlds, once we have the information, we need to organize this information. And we've been doing that for a long time, since the time of Linnaeus. And the data that we have about the biodiversity is mainly hosted in these institutions called natural history museums. And this is an example of labels that are within the specimens that being collected at some point in time, somewhere in the planet, and then they are stored in these organizations. This information sometimes is even written by hand, as you can see. And some of this information is sometimes it's too old to be collected with a GPS. So you don't have very good geographic information associated with this information. And that's why we in the biodiversity community, we've been retrospectively georeferencing this information to try to put latitude and longitude and bring this into databases. But this is the information we have, and this is the information we've been using to measure change. The problem is that, as you can imagine, the data resides in museums all over the world, right? You have museums in Bolivia, in Colombia, in Germany, in the US, in the East, West Coast. All this information have been collected by local biodiversity scientists, biologists in general. But they never, before internet, before the communications were so easy in the world, people were doing their thing, you know, they were collecting the data, and if there was a guy in Bolivia collecting data, he thought about a way to put this information into a Excel table maybe, and he was structuring the data to fit the needs that they have. But there was this other guy in Liberia doing the same, but using a different approach. So there was this problem, right, of harmonization. And this led to other problems, right? The data was not findable, was not accessible, was not available. Then there were people from Europe coming to places and providing one taxonomic authority for collections being made. In some places, there were people from the US with a different taxonomic authority, and naming things slightly different than the other group, which make these things not compatible. And the other thing is, like, we all like our we all have our personal biases, right? I might like butterflies. You might like ants, or you might like moths. And we are all collecting whatever we think is the most important thing for our own research, our own needs. And there is many more other biases in terms of the biodiversity information that we've been collecting. For instance, I can tell you that most of the biodiversity information that we have for all the planet is not more than 5 kilometers away from roads. That means that we have not too much a good idea of what's in the Amazon, for instance, where there is not too many roads. So all these biases, we were trying to scratch in our heads, trying to figure out what to do. And then there was this amazing initiative that came, which is GBIF, and the acronym is the Global Biodiversity Information Facility. This is an intergovernmental effort. It's a network of networks, and it has a small secretariat in Copenhagen, and I'm a big advocate and a big fan, a big supporter of this and user of this initiative. They came and they said, okay, guys, we need to start thinking about how do we make sure that all the biodiversity, all the library of life that we have, it's stored, it's changed in the same format. So they came with a very interesting proposal. That was the Darwin Core Standard, and that's the standard that we all use today to exchange information on biodiversity occurrences. And this standard right now allows the exchange of almost 2.1 billion records and growing. And they do have still some problems, because initially this was supposed to work as a real-time model where a user makes a request to this central hub, and the central hub mirrors this request to whoever has that information made by the query. But there are some places still in the planet where internet is not as efficient as in other places. So the central repository creates a cache of all the information and provides the response almost immediately, right? That's one of the things about this. The other thing is that making sure that everybody complies with this standard, and the metadata standard for moving the data around the Darwin Core allows the people that were structuring the data in one format in Bolivia to map their structure into the common standard. And then by doing that, they make sure that the data is interoperable with the data from other people, because other people are doing the same. So you could actually get data for any species in the planet in a format that allows you to do any analysis. That's the beauty of this tool. And then the other thing is that the publishers, the people that are putting the data on this hub, keep the rights on the data. So you could say, I would like to share my data openly, right? The only thing that I want is to get recognition, and GBIF gives you a DOI. So you could actually do that in a really efficient way. So how this data is being used, right? Because that's one of the important points that we want to make is not only that the data is available, but the data becomes useful. So this effort, the Global Biodiversity Information Facility, and all the harmonization of biodiversity information started in parallel to the development of a really nice tool, which is called Species Distribution Model. Species Distribution Model, in a nutshell, is it's just running correlations between the species occurrences and gridded environmental data. You go and collect the data of a particular species, and then you connect these point observations with a particular locality in the planet that has a value, let's say temperature and precipitation. And using that temperature and precipitation, You could predict where else you can find those temperature and precipitation conditions. And by doing that, you could actually create a suitability map. And that connection, the powerful connection between the in situ and the Earth, in situ Earth observations and the remote sense Earth observations has made possible, you know, the added value that people are looking into these models for sharing data. So if you could share your data through this hub, then you could actually have access to all this wealth of information. And by doing that, you could put your data into a larger context that allows you to make, you know, a map of an inference, a geographic inference of where else the conditions for my species might be. And then you could also play, you know, you could project this into time, which allows you to make predictions for future and climate change scenarios. And you could also project this into space, which allows you to make predictions about, for instance, invasive species. And by doing that, you close this circle, right? Because you are finally able to inform policy. And I just want to touch on those, on two interesting aspects of this process, right? Even though this effort, this intergovernmental effort, the Global Biodiversity Information Facility, has allowed so much data sharing, a revolution in the biodiversity world in a way. There is still people that are a bit hesitant about sharing the data. And it's understandable, right? It's understandable. We need to work. This is a people problem. This is not a technical issue that we need to solve. The technical issue has been solved by GBIF specifically for this particular data. This is more a people problem. And the second problem that I think it's important to mention is this issue of signal to noise, right? We have so much information today that now we need to shift a little bit in terms of the capacities that we provide to scientists, because we need to start learning how to steal signal from noise. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Miguel. Indeed, a very interesting story about biodiversity data. Please ask questions in the chat while you are thinking about your question. I would like to just point out, well, first of all, you mentioned the essential biodiversity variables. It's sort of one way of organizing, I guess, or fine-tuning the data, the type of data you are collecting. But if we are looking at this as a data life cycle perspective, looking at what you said from a data life cycle perspective, I made the observation that for biodiversity data, so in situ data, that you said some of the data sets are actually handwritten, right? So you have a very long life cycle for some of these data that put challenges on interoperability. How do you share it? Because the world has changed so much during the life of certain data sets, right? Is this, and then you have GBIF. Obviously, you didn't talk so much about it, but GBIF have solved some of the problems of, well, first of all, having a place, you know, so sort of a retirement, a repository for this data, no matter when they were born. So that's also part of the data lifecycle that has been solved for this complex set of data. But the life cycle perspective here, do you in GBIF, for instance, how did you specifically, so what type of challenges in terms of the definition of the phases of the life cycle, were there any, can you elaborate on that?
Right. I mean, I think the process that GBIF and the Secretariat and all the different generations of people that been working on this, thought about this in a much more fluid and natural way, right? They didn't think about this in a way. They didn't think about the data life cycle as a structure as we are now thinking. I think if you want to say, perhaps this is, GBIF did this without even the, before the FAIR principles were created, right? They were doing this just naturally, thinking about how to make a service to humanity by making biodiversity observations available. I think that's my answer.
Yeah, thank you. Marie-Françoise, I give you the floor now.
Thank you, Bente. So, yes, my understanding of your presentation, Miguel, is that facing the major challenges that we have ahead really require a good alignment of all the stakeholders, from the intergovernmental organizations to the citizens. We have to align, and the data life cycle, data management principles, data management plans are means and tools to try to facilitate this alignment. That is really a need. And in situ, it is the same for remote sensing and for in situ, but in situ involves so many participants, so many projects, so many research groups and so on, that it's even more critical because we have such a big heterogeneity and diversity in situ. So this is why we are here advertising, and your message was really supporting that. You have exemplified with the biodiversity. The food sustainability is also critical, and we will have people from GeoGLAM also talking into this dialogue series, because I think that this is very important for all the big challenges we have ahead.
Yes, indeed. Any more questions? You are probably getting tired of sitting in front of the screen, as we all are. We are almost 1.5 hours. Andre, did you want to question? Yes, Andre. Yes.
From Technical University of Varna, because we have special project for port safety, and part of the task is also to interface with the rest of the projects and the rest of the ILIAD project. So can you please specify, if that is possible, of course, what kind of protocols we need to prepare for our part to interface with the rest? So in order to get the data into our project and to send the data out from our project, we need to know what kind of interface protocols we need to lay down at that specific moment. For example, we base everything on standard maritime NMA protocols, which are standard for maritime equipment, but is that enough? Or we need to create some specific protocols which the rest of the team and or the rest of the ILIAD projects will use?
Thank you, Andre. So for those of you who don't know, ILIAD is a project, the Horizon Europe project, developing digital twins for the ocean. So a lot of requirements on making data of very different types of data interoperable, and also facilitate interactivity, with the data, also in near real time. So there are some tough requirements on this type of data. So anybody wants to chip in and comment and answer to Andre here from the panel, perhaps?
Of course, I can share around the group via emails what kind of data we prepared to interface with. For example, I can give exactly the sentences for the wind, for the waves, for the meteo data. So I can share this, and of course, if you say, no, Andre, we use different type of protocols. Definitely we'll put the rest of the team protocols without any problem.
Yes, Miguel, did you want, or Marie-Françoise, this is maybe OGC supporting answer.
Well, here I have no easy answer to it because as a matter of fact, it will also depend on the type of data, if it's numerical model, because ILIAD is going to merge all type of data. And again, it's also data which are managed by different stakeholders, different groups. So there are people in ILIAD that would work on best practices. I know that this is a topic that we will discuss again later into the dialogues. Some people think that because I had some discussion with potential participants that think that we offer too much like a catalog of options into the geodata implementation document, and that we should recommend more hardly some of the protocols of some of the standards. So this is a discussion we can have in next dialogues. But the problem is that you have existing data that are served by different providers, and they will implement each of them probably even if we try to standardize different protocols. So I'm worried that there is no easy answer to that, and this is why there are people in ILIAD working on best practices.
Okay, thanks.
Miguel, you wanted to add on to that?
No, I just want to mention that I participated on a GBIF meeting, and I think there was a discussion between the possibility to serve GBIF data to the digital twins projects that the European Union is currently embarking on. So I know as far as for that particular aspect, that's all I know. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. So just as Marie-Françoise, this is just the first of a dialogue series. We chose to start on talking about the data lifecycle because understanding what we mean by a data lifecycle is very important to inform the rest, for informing the rest of the discussions on data sharing and data management principles. So that's why we started with this, and this event here will be a reference for all of us to revisit, to remind ourselves on you know, the background or foundation for the data that we are collecting and using. I see that, well, I don't see any more questions, do I? No, not now. So I will close this meeting by sharing the results of the second poll and then opening, as I promised, the question that is more open, that where you can fill in your comment, also encouraged by Carl here. So I will start by sharing the results of the poll, which we were asking about your knowledge and familiarity with the different data sharing and data management principles or frameworks. And not surprisingly, a lot of you had heard about the FAIR principles before, 68%. And trust was a little bit also expected, a little less familiar, 32%, care is 40%, and other 16%. And in the questions that you will get afterwards, yeah, we will actually ask you about which other frameworks you have heard about. So thank you for that. I hope you will spend time on answering that question, because that's very useful for this entire community. So thank you for that. Oh yeah, I didn't share the results, did I? Yes, I did. Okay. Now, are there any final comments? Because maybe I will show you, share my screen now and showing you just a reminder that this is the first of several, as we concluded for the question from Andre, that this is the first one. So we have been introduced to the data lifecycle. We have heard about different definitions, how important it is for data management plans. We have learned the mapping or the linkage between different definitions of data life cycles, definitions of descriptions, and also the principles. We have heard about and learned about an example from biodiversity, the complexity in terms of the topic itself, time, different collection methods, etc. So, and now we are going to, on next Monday, on the 12th, same time at 4 o'clock Central PM, Central European time, we will dive into the data sharing principles. And then you see each Monday, we will go through systematically the different data management principles. So you have already seen the blog post on GEO website, where you will get a reminder. We will use the very same Zoom link here. So you don't have to think about, you know, easy to find it. And then I think we are pretty much done. I will just then, how do I do this? I will share the launching. I'm now launching the last poll where you can answer the questions. I will leave this open for about 15 minutes. So you have time to do that. You can go and take, you know, pick up a coffee or something to drink, and then in peace and quiet, fill in this poll, and we will gather the information. If finally, if you have a final question or comment, you can do it now. Any final words? I will give the floor to Marie-Christine, Carl, and Miguel as a very short final greeting from you. Marie-Christine first.
Hi. Well, it was really nice to listening to the other speakers. It was really interesting. I hope I can continue the dialogue with you the following Mondays, and I hope to exchange with you on more on the 24th about data management plan.
Absolutely. We are looking forward to that. Carl?
Sure. Yes, I just wanted to thank everybody for coming, and I look forward to any suggestions or insights that folks that have come in might provide through the poll that Bente just shared, as we're continuing to look for extension points for the continuing work that we're looking at for the linkages between the GEO principles and the rest of the universe within which we operate.
Absolutely. And before, Miguel, I will give you the floor. Can you just stay on and turn on your cameras for a group picture? I forgot that. So please be ready to do. I beg you, all the audience, to put on your cameras. So after Miguel has given his talk, we will take a group picture. Oh, we can do it at the same time, actually. So Miguel, your words.
No, thank you. Thank you so much for giving us the opportunity. The data management issues can become very quickly very boring and dense. So it's important that we communicate on this very important and increasingly relevant issue. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Miguel. Okay, cameras on, everybody. I see, Paula, you are on the road, I assume, or at least moving. Yeah, thank you. Don't be shy. We are a community, and we are passionate about data sharing and data management, aren't we? So we need to share this moment together. We are waiting for a few more cameras on. If you were just distracted, the camera is on now. That's what we want to. A couple of more. I'm taking some Benjamin, Diego, and Giota. Are you? Yes, Benjamin, thank you. Giota and Diego. Oh, Well, I think we are ready to take a picture. Smile. Thank you so much. I hope to see you also next Monday. Marie-Françoise will be moderating that one. And then we have other people that we will introduce you to that will also moderate. We will create this community together. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.